thing. So this Wrath Classic business, basically Blizzard actually accidentally published the release date for Wrath Classic, and then they unpublished it, and now they have republished it. It is September 26th. Which, I mean, I don't want to play that, so...
You don't want to play that?
No, I do, but... there's between alpha and... Oh my god. Well, I want to play it anyway, so yes, the 26th of September is when Wrath Classic is going to start, so that'll be pretty fun.
Yeah, that's... it's that awkward thing, right, where I feel like no matter what they do, when they're running 2 World of Warcrafts along the same side, they are going to kind of run into problems unless, I guess... Yeah, you have to be a pretty hardcore player these days to actually play both to a decent effect. Like, Wrath's not extremely heavy on your time, but, like, I guess the open-ended nature of modern World of Warcraft just means you could play all day long, and every like, time you're not playing, you're wasting M+ chances of loot. So it's like, if you're, like, a super hardcore player, you're kind of scuffed. But I guess it's, like, kind of the... I suppose it's just, you're kind of tired of retail, go play Wrath for a bit, and that probably works. Although I'd love to see the numbers. I'd love to see the numbers of overlap. Like how many MAUs are there that don't play one or the other? Yeah, I would say it is really surprisingly high.
It's definitely big. Yeah. Yeah, I wonder, maybe the more time goes on, the more they are willing to just have those things overlap because they know it hits different audiences. They're very different games.
That's what I imagine. It's like there's always this like fear whenever you're kind of doing multiple products or something, multiple releases. I think there's always this idea of, you're cannibalizing. And every time that's kind of been talked about, I think, at least from like what I follow in the games industry and stuff, every time someone's like, are you cannibalizing your own sales or your own attention? Everyone's always like, no. But to be fair, like in press releases and interviews, they're not going to say, oh yeah, absolutely, we saw sales drop by 40% because we released these two at the same time. No one's going to say that. So it's like, I think everyone is, I think it's just, there's a lot more hunger for basically everything than you could imagine in terms of like, people will rarely drop something they like to go do something else. So I think they're kind of lucky in that sense. I think the real cannibalization is like, it comes in competition form. Wherever, someone else starts eking on your market, that's when you have to be careful. But I don't think you really cannibalize yourself too hard. Because especially like Square Enix is a pretty good example of this, where they're releasing so many JRPGs this year, it is actually crazy.
It's insane.
And anyone with who only spends a couple hours a week playing games, they're never going to be anywhere near able to play everything. But they kind of don't care, because I think they'll lose 5-10%, maybe 15% at most of who would buy that game. But everyone who wouldn't buy that game is a much bigger number, and they'll go buy the other one. Because even they announced, they didn't announce this complete leak, but Tactics Ogre Reborn's coming out on November 11th. So that's not long after Star Ocean and stuff. So I think that's the case of for World of Warcraft, it's just, there are people who play both. No need to worry about it from their end.
This is interesting. I forgot about the Wintergrasp change being known for a little while. No, this is new as well.
Yep.
Okay, so yeah. Wintergrasp is actually going to be an instanced epic battleground rather than being something that happens in the world. Which, I mean, immediately to me that just sounds wrong and sad, but when I think about it, I then realize why they've done this. They've seen significantly, I think anyway, they've seen significantly more brutal server size disparities. And that used to happen back in the day, and the way that Blizzard tried to get around that was giving the people who did not have the numbers a buff. And that buff could get super powerful, but in a way it was also no replacement for just having more people in more places at once. Given how Wintergrasp works. So how are they doing that then? Put simply, the battle as it exists in 2008 is fundamentally incompatible with layers, so the modern charting system. So behind that, mechanisms, events, and scripts control how the battle is initiated, resolved, how rewards are given out. Those cannot function properly across layers. Interesting. They discover this early, they spent a lot of time trying to find a workable solution, but ultimately, they could not land on a solution where they felt the BG would function in a satisfying way on any layered realm. Wow.
Makes sense.
So they wish they were able to keep the original vision there, but it just didn't work. So they have this compromise. Right. And ultimately, when weighing alternatives like unacceptable performance versus a limited experience that excluded the overwhelming majority of players versus instancing versus entirely redesigning, they felt that instancing would cause the least harm and let the largest number of people do it. So, every 3 hours, people in the outdoor zone or Dalaran get a notification the battle is about to begin. If you're in the outdoor zone, you get a queue prompt. People in Dalaran can speak to an NPC within their faction's area. When queued, people get placed into a Wintergrasp battleground, and shortly thereafter it begins. However, unlike Alterac Valley, the threshold and the minimum number of players on either faction needed to start the battle is significantly lower. This means you could enter a battle with 40 players in the Horde and 5 in the Alliance. At first glance, this doesn't seem fair, but Wintergrasp had an important and incredibly fun mechanic, Tenacity. I remember that. So Tenacity, the stacking buff that vastly increases your power in the underrepresented side, which can stack so high that a player could just become a raid boss in terms of power. This was a challenging, fun part of the original vision, and they felt it was important to bring it back in some way. That's curious. They know it can be frustrating when one faction has got long queues with BGs like AV, so with the decision of Wintergrasp only being available during select periods of time, right, they just felt like they should put Tenacity in and keep the QB reasonable and ensure that it does actually happen every 3 hours. So, when you win, you get Essence of Wintergrasp. This buff lets you play additional content, like being able to fight the elemental enemies in the zone after the battle, as well as access to the Stonekeeper shards, a special currency the players can use to purchase powerful items such as mounts, item enhancements and recipes, and of course VOA. And this just works if anyone on your faction participates in and wins, your entire faction is granted Essence of Wintergrasp, and it lasts till the next battle. There you go.
Man, they are really like... You can see the technical hoops they have to jump through to make this happen. This is actually kind of crazy that... It seems like a reasonable enough decision, but you kind of go, oh, that is really like... I don't really want to use the word because it's got so many negative connotations, but jank. That's like their engineer sat for like days, went, oh, we can't solve this. How do we get around this shit? Faction-wide buff? Question mark? And that's like the best answer they had, which I think is like, man, I love how like, I think a lot of people kind of thought, me included, that like, as soon as Classic was up and running, they'd be like, oh yeah, you've got all the game data, all the, the private servers can do it all fine. This is bound to be easy enough for you to do. And they just keep, because they have to keep things like officially supported and officially running and are like merging the clients, they run into so many issues. But I can't see anything immediately wrong with this, right? There's nothing kind of jumping out at me outside of like kind of losing the feeling and it being a bit awkward for a player to have Wintergrasp pop up every now and again. But I don't know. It seems reasonable enough for me. I think.
Well, Wintergrasp. That's it. Yeah, it's going to be different, but I suppose it's just there's probably no real alternative. Since it seems that this is not a player quantity issue, this is just literally how things work.